Hey guys, it's Dorr and Coch, Tactical Hyve. Today's video, we're going to be going over submachine guns, our top picks, which ones we think made the biggest impact on history, on the battlefield, etc. So, up next. All right, guys, today's video is brought to us by Dry Fire Mag. If you are living in a striker fire world, Dry Fire Mag is a must for training. When we transitioned from the SIG 226 onto the Glock platform, one of the first things we picked up as trainers was Dry Fire Mags for our guys. You know, having to stop, rack the slide every time, impeding your training process is not the deal. Go and check the Dry Fire Mag out in the link below. And let's get to the video. Submachine guns. All right, guys, we're gonna set some ground rules first because you know, not all of them are fully qualified. Number one, in order to actually be a submachine gun, it needs to be fully automatic because submachine guns were designed to be employed on full auto. That way they're a pistol caliber shoulder fired weapon. They're big. You can manage the recoil much better than a pistol. The sights are generally much farther apart. It's more accurate.
And the intent was for frontline troops, okay? Whereas, you know, you've got a lot of cool stuff now, but they're PDWs, they're personal defense weapons. Okay, so that's the difference. And you have small guns now, but they're not going to the frontline troops, or they're not intended for frontline troops, whereas submachine guns definitely were.
Now, that doesn't mean frontline troops don't, you know, get a hold of these things and use them for great purposes. Obviously some examples in that realm would be the FNP90, not going to make the list, as well as H&K's MP7 and MP5K, or Kurtz. Those are PDWs designed to be concealed, designed to be conveniently located, and to give you more firepower, more capability than a traditional, just standard pistol handgun.
More powerful than a pistol, but not, you know, not as big as a mainline weapon.
All right. Now we got that out of the way.
Now we got our terms defined.
Okay.
So that you guys in the comments can like, oh, well, what about, yeah, okay.
All right.
Stay in our definition here, all right?
Why don't you start us off with...
Okay, so the first one, most mass-produced, I think, you know, and definitely has the record for the time it took to go from the drawing board to an actual prototype and into production, and that would be the Sten. The Sten, I think they had them down to like $1.50 each when they made them, and it's basically a pipe and some really, you know, crudely machined stuff, but the thing worked.
Yeah, it worked well enough. It was, you know, reliable. It performed well enough. The big takeaway is it was just super easy to produce. They pumped out a ton of them. They kept innovating. There's a bunch of different models, suppressed models, different stock options. It was so easy to produce, it was so effective that actually the Germans adopted it at the very end of the war and were issuing it out to their like Hitler Youth and old men.
Yeah, didn't they like rotate the mag?
Yeah, they rotated the magwell down because only the British Commonwealth do weird stuff with magwells. But yeah, that's how, and that's a huge endorsement that the enemy, who was using the same 9x19 parabellum round, just went ahead and adopted it there at the end.
Yeah.
As a last-ditch effort.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
And the
Which is why it's so low on the list. Had it worked, you know, Sten would have been number one. And then Sten also led to the Sterling. So Sterling did begin development in '44, but they had better things to build, like planes and, you know.
But they kept that same basic, you know, form function, you know. The side magazine, you know, they just added a decent pistol grip to it rather than that first one was rough on the Sten.
The desperation had definitely worn off on firearms manufacturing over there in the British Isles. The Sterling, it did still have that side mag, you know, God forbid you were a lefty, but they shot great.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
I got a chance to shoot one of the countries that we were working with, their Ministry of Defense. Still had them in inventory, so the suppressed Sterling, that thing was, it was a gas. It was a lot of fun to shoot.
And
good to go.
You know, some of you watching may already know this, but the Galactic Empire actually adopted it for the base of their E11 blaster, which we all know couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. But, you know, they seem to be reliable. They got the mag down to a pretty small size. Yeah. But again, you know,
you get that directed energy weapon thing going.
You know, Darth Vader approved. So,
all right. So what's next?
All right. What is next? Number 2, we got the Thompson SMG. These things were developed by a guy named Thompson, John. He was a brigadier general, spent most of his career, or at least the end of it, in the Army Ordnance Department. He was a gun guy, procurement guy, and he saw a need for a trench broom.
Yeah, they didn't have the right stuff to work trenches.
The Germans had already brought in, you know, really the beginning of the SMG.
Yeah,
you know,
it was more of that Schnellfoil or what the hell was
that? Yeah, very, very early version of what, you know, we later saw in World War II. But we needed an answer. You know, the BAR did make it to the battlefield before Armistice in 1918, but the Thompson did not. It was still in development. It was still being tweaked, and the one that really hit the market and made the first indelible mark was the 1921 model.
Yeah, that was all the Gucci, had nice sights, and they were incredibly expensive at the time. You know, $200 was a lot. Okay.
Yeah. They're very hard to produce, but they were very well made.
Oh yeah.
They were not common. You know, the media was terrible back then, just like it is now. And there were politicians passing horrendously stupid laws back then, just like they do now. So, you know,
that's
organized
the
crime,
Control Act,
gangsters,
because of the Thompson.
You know, literally in the 20s, organized crime, you know, gangsters became captains of industry. You know, they became fabulously wealthy. The competition went up, and as did the level of violence. There's, you know, for instance, it was nicknamed like the Roaring 20s. The Thompson was referred to as the Chicago typewriter. Yet there's probably 10 times as many people getting killed in Chicago today than there was back then. But anyway, this thing was used in limited numbers in the United States military after World War I. The Marine Corps did use them in what became known as the Banana Wars down in the Caribbean.
Brushfire wars.
Brushfire stuff. Wars. They're just kind of setting people straight. But when the end of the 20s, the 1928 model came out, and this thing was very well made. Great sights. And it came with like a compensator on the front end.
Yeah, all the Gucci.
I mean, very expensive, very Gucci. Probably the finest arm made at the time. Mm-hmm. But as World War II came about and the just massive amount of weapons we needed, that the cost had to go down. So they modified it again. They dumbed it down. They cheapened it. That's how we got the M1 and the M1A1 submachine gun, which is the iconic SMG for American
Audie Murphy, all your black and white World War II flicks, you know, hell, Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
Watch that. They used it to good effect. They're nothing wrong with that thing.
4 different mags that I know of, 20 round, 30 round box, and then a 50 and 100 round drum. The drums were not reliable.
Still a decent gun. It filled the role really well. Really well.
It did. So that was our number 2. Tried and true, and you know, really OG for this side of the pond. All right. Up next, we're going with the Schmeiser.
You know, MP40.
The Germans answered the Thompson with the MP38, which was a very well built, very nice submachine gun chambered in 9mm. As the war got going, for reasons we spoke of previously on the Sten, they had to cheapen it. They turned it into a stamped receiver. They simplified it a little bit, but it was still a great gun. Still a workhorse, very reliable, accurate. They made great ammo back then. Mm-hmm. And man, the thing, they fielded just tons of these things. They used them all throughout their military. It did see a little bit of a second life after the war, but not really. You saw them in small numbers, being here and there.
Well, the Germans they built their units around the machine gun. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then your regular rifle guys had, you know, a bolt action rifle. Mm-hmm. And you got your, you know, the submachine gun. I mean, if I was running around back then in that particular army, I think I'd be going with the MP40.
Yeah, just carry more machine gun ammo. Yeah. Now, the Germans were so awesome at making guns that they basically made the MP40 null and void by the end of the war with the MP44, which, shoots an intermediate cartridge, so it's not going to make this list. But, yeah, man, I mean, I never heard anything negative or bad about an MP40. I've gotten to see them up close. I've got to handle them. These guns are made in the 30s and 40s, and they still operate. They still feel great.
You can just you feel the quality, the attention to detail that went into making them. It's not stamped, anything. It's not polymer. It didn't just get extruded out of a machine or pressed in it's milled. They're really it's like a fine watch. They're pretty cool.
Like, honestly, if I had to pick SMG from World War II, it would be that one. Just honestly, you're saving weight. You got better mag capacity.
Yep.
The things were ahead of their time. All right.
Moving right along, we got a couple of...
Number 4. So the Israelis, once they got that whole Israel thing going, and good on them, they were just using World War II surplus, and they were using whatever they could get their hands on. They had American stuff, they had British stuff, they had German stuff, Mausers and MP40s.
A lot of it.
They were just getting by with whatever they could, but eventually they started...
There was a lot of German stuff just kind of laying around.
They weren't using it.
Yeah.
They didn't need it. Freaking but eventually the Israelis wanted their own thing, so they came out with the Uzi 9mm.
Yep.
I can't say Uzi and then say 9mm without saying Uzi 9mm, because that's what it is. But yeah, they came out with that in the 50s. And they used it to good effect for quite a while. I mean, I think their attack units were still using Uzis up until very recently. If not, they still are. I've seen railed out, like full modern accoutrement variations of not only the full size, which is the one we're really talking about, but they came out with the mini and the micro. I've never shot a micro, but I have shot the mini, and the mini is by far my favorite.
Yeah, the rate of fire on that was like 1,200 RPM.
The smaller they get, the higher the rate of fire. I know that doesn't make sense, but you know what? That's just how they roll over there. But yeah, the mini Uzi, I own a full-size one, but it's not full auto, just a plain, modified one. And if it's not full auto, it's not really an SMG, in my opinion, because they are designed to be employed on full auto. And they're very controlled, but I have shot them, the full auto ones, incredibly reliable, very accurate, very simple.
Yeah.
And you can convert them to different calibers fairly easily. Like mine can go from 9 to 45.
And they move the magazine well to, they made the whole thing a lot more compact just by moving the magazine from in front to into the pistol grip. Yeah, so that choked everything down, made nice and simple. It's made of stamped parts. It's got basically one big moving part that bolts what moves back and forth. So it's reliable in, dirty, sandy, whatever, that thing is going to work.
Yeah, and there were different buttstock configurations. You could run different types of cans on them, different size cans for different sustained rate of fire rates.
Yeah, that folding stock was... it's a bit complex. The regular wood stock, I think I would have gone with that one. That thing, pulling that thing out was like...
Yeah, I'd like to get a wood stock for mine, because shooting the other one is joyless.
And there's no cheap welds.
No, it's not a precise instrument. It's a roofing hammer.
Hey, it's a machine gun. What's a machine gun for?
Well, not mine, but yeah, the real ones are. Yeah, and great gun, super reliable, and... they have just withstood the test of time. Mm-hmm. And yeah, by putting that mag in the grip, it shortened the gun up, made it more compact. And frankly, I'm surprised that isn't more popular to this day.
Well, it's fairly popular. MP7 kind of follows along those lines.
Yeah, there's one.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get to our top dog, we got a couple of honorable mentions. Now, our guys back in Vietnam, the SEALs back then, for their submachine gun, they were using the Carl G M45. It's a 9mm foldable, fairly compact gun. But then it was Swedish and called a Swedish K. But then they stopped selling them to us because we were at war. So Smith & Wesson stepped up with the M76, and it's an improved. Carl G, basically. Right. And they were still in the armory when I got to SEAL Team 5.
Nice. Yeah, that's a gun I heard nothing but great things about. They're very underrated. One of the coolest features is it shipped with 2 different barrels. It had the standard barrel, and then it had the suppressed barrel. And it had a quick detach. You could go back and forth from one to the other fairly easily. And I haven't seen that since. I thought that was pretty cool. Took stick mags. It did a better job of keeping all the muck and grime out of the housing. The M45 was lacking definitely in that realm. But the M45 was a World War II era developed gun. It came out in 1945 at the very end of the war from a neutral country, so it saw no action as far as I know. But yeah, man, the M76 was awesome.
Yeah, it was a good gun. And then that one, and along the longest serving submachine gun in the U.S. was the good old grease gun.
That's right, M3 and M3A1. I've gotten to shoot these ones. They are awesome. Awesome, absolutely. They're freaking. You can saw those barrels up. You can put cans on them. You can port them. Put whatever you want. People modified them. They stayed in service for a very long time. And I mean, the tank crews in the Gulf War had them.
Yeah, that was the last guys I knew that
Delta
was using them.
Took them into Iran. All modded out. I mean, these things withstood the test of time. I got to shoot them quite a bit on one of my deployments because they were still being used as a viable platform by the locals. And I mean, just as reliable as it gets. Even the mags, I mean, the mags they haven't made. When was the last time they made a new grease gun mag? Like probably a very, very long time ago. And those still work. And it's 45, man.
They're heavy.
Good stuff.
They're thick. They made a good magazine, but it's a heavy one.
Our guys definitely used those probably in the first couple years of Vietnam. It wasn't too uncommon to see them using those as well, both in the standard and suppressed configuration.
Well, there was a bunch of them laying around because they made tons of them. Okay, they were cheap and easy to make. A Thompson would cost you $200, whereas these cost $15.
Yeah, according to Brandon Herrera recently.
Yeah, I mean,
we'll take his word for it.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah, and then anything else?
The other gun I want to mention is the Colt SMG.
Ooh,
it's a 9mm version of your AR-15. And man, the manual of arms is exactly the same. It's straight up blowback. Fires from the closed bolt though, so it's a tad more accurate than something that fires from an open bolt. And what that means is the bolt's to the rear, you squeeze the trigger and the bolt goes forward, strips off a round, jams it into the chamber and fires it all in one go. So there's a lag between the time you pull the trigger and the time the gun goes off. So most of these other ones are firing from the open bolt. So if they got that right, fires from the closed bolt and all the manual arms was exactly the same as your M16. So that, Colt just never really pushed it because they were pushing their full-size guns. And that kind of leads us to number one.
It's odd that platform did not do better numbers-wise and being fielded because, I mean, the training for your government, military, whatever units, like, hey, you already know how to work on M16s. This is super easy. A lot of the parts are exactly the same.
Some police agencies and the Department of Energy, I think, were the ones that were running around with those.
DEA, it did get used, but just not anywhere near where our next one's going to take us. But anyway, that was just some honorable mentions. So that was a bit long-winded, but we like them. So we're going to talk about them because that's what we do here. All right. Number one, obviously, you guys know it. You love it.
Top dog.
The top dog, the greatest of all time. Maybe the most iconically badass guns.
In the counter-terrorist world.
In all worlds. Terrorists and counter-terrorists alike. Hollywood terrorists love this gun, as do the protagonists that constantly stomp them down. Of course, we're talking about the HK MP5. Both Coach and I got to use this thing quite a bit. Have nothing bad to say about it other than the bolt doesn't lock back to the rear. I guess that's not good. But
that's my one complaint on there.
Yeah.
But what makes up for it is that H&K slap.
Yeah.
Slapping that thing back, and it's just fun. It's iconic. It's awesome. And honestly, we probably would have been better off with the manual of arms of the Colt submachine gun. But boy, once the SAS used it to take down the Iranian embassy, front page, anybody who's anybody in the counter-terrorist world needed an MP5.
Yes.
And reliable, accurate, nothing bad to say about them. I mean, the recoil impulse was almost nothing.
It's like the ultimate status symbol for almost 20 years. You know, and it was used in movies as much as any other platform. It is a 9mm version of the G3, which is 50s technology. The MP5s were actually made in the 60s. I believe the West German police even fielded them before the 70s began. And it did go through a few modifications. You know, there's different styles, different types, different customers had different things they wanted. Our Navy versions had no finger grooves, had ambidextrous controls. We had those cool flash hiders on ours.
Yeah.
And
Tri-lug thing.
yeah, they were just awesome.
Yeah, when we picked him up, oh, geez. I got to SEAL Team 5 in 1987, and about that same time, they rolled in with the MP5. So we started working with those, and I worked with those until mid to late 90s. Then we hung them up and went with the Shorty M4. So that 10-inch M4 basically took up the role of the submachine gun in our world anyway. You know, we still had the if you want to go quiet, the suppressed MP5 SD. I think they're still in the inventory.
No, they got rid of everything.
Okay.
The MP7s finally got rid of the 5s. They both the K and the SD. So the MP5 Navies were phased out in the very early 2000s. I got to the team in 04 and we still had all 3 versions, but they were nowhere near the numbers they had been. They were just kind of niche weapons off to the side that you could use for whatever purpose. I did break the Navy out, the full-size one, a little bit, but it was just for fun because I like guns. The Ks and the SDs, though, were used, and they were used really not during training, but as soon as you got on deployment and you had a reason for those capabilities, they were used to great effect. And then eventually the 7s just completely took over, but you know, I don't really want to get into that too much.
Yeah, but that was again kind of a niche thing with you know, the MP5 was the last submachine gun that the SEALs used as a submachine gun, because after that, you know, we had a 10-inch M4.
Right.
I mean, honestly, you're good to go. And now
Better.
with the Rattler and this 300 blackout, I mean, you can make that thing quiet too. So
Yeah, the Rattler in that 5-inch Shorty configuration, that is the PDW SMG that's being used in those niche capabilities, for those niche capabilities. That's where we're at now, as far as we know. I know the Army's got that.
number one, man.
Yeah, the Army's got that, whatever that thing is, the BT.
Goes into a PDW though. It's the intent is not for frontline troops. So that puts it solidly in PDW space there.
MP5 King, number one. Impossible to look cool in the 80s without one. And that's got to count for something.
Good guys or bad guys.
Yeah. All right.
All right, guys. So this is our list of submachine guns. Let us know in the comments if we missed anything, or you think we're, you know, full of crap.
Yeah.
We probably are. You never know.
Tell us.
But yeah. So like, subscribe, do your thing.
All right, guys. Take care. This is Dorr. Coach out.